Look outside your window right now. Whatever you see, trees, buildings, streets, sky, none of it existed for most of Earth's history. The world you know is a snapshot, a single frame from a 4.5 billion year movie. For almost all of that time, no human eyes existed to see it. Here is something that should shift your perspective permanently. If Earth's history were compressed into a single year, humans wouldn't appear until the final minutes of December 31st. Everything we've ever built, every civilization, every war, every work of art, all of it happens in the last seconds before midnight. The Earth that existed before us was unimaginably different. Continents in different positions, atmospheres with different compositions, creatures that would seem alien to modern eyes, climates that swung from global ice ages to hothouse conditions, hot enough to melt polar ice entirely. If you are settling in for sleep tonight, let me take you on a journey through deep time, through worlds that existed long before anything like us could have survived them, through the strange and beautiful history of the planet we inherited. Subscribe and stick around. Let's start at the very beginning. 4.5 billion years ago, Earth didn't exist. The Sunday had just ignited, surrounded by a disk of gas and dust left over from its formation. Within that disk, particles were colliding, sticking together, gradually building larger and larger objects. These growing objects, planetesimals, swept up material from their orbits. They collided with each other, sometimes shattering, sometimes merging. Over millions of years, a few dominant bodies emerged. One of them would become Earth. The early Earth was nothing like today. It was a ball of molten rock, constantly bombarded by debris from the still-forming solar system. The surface was an ocean of magma, glowing red and orange. No solid ground existed anywhere. The temperature was hot enough to vaporize rock. Then something catastrophic happened. Catastrophic even by the standards of that violent time. A Mars-sized object, which scientists call Theia, collided with the young Earth. The impact was so powerful, it nearly destroyed both worlds. The collision threw enormous amounts of debris into orbit around Earth. Over time, this debris coalesced into the Moon. Our Moon, the same one you can see tonight, was born from the most violent event in Earth's history. It has been orbiting us ever since, a reminder of our catastrophic origins. For hundreds of millions of years after formation, Earth endured what scientists call the Late Heavy Bombardment. Asteroids and comets rained down continuously, sterilizing the surface over and over. Any life that might have started was wiped out repeatedly. But the bombardment eventually slowed. The surface cooled. Water vapor in the atmosphere condensed and fell as rain that lasted for millions of years, filling the first oceans. Earth transformed from a world of fire to a world of water. The early Earth had no continents as we know them. The entire surface might have been covered by a global ocean, with only scattered volcanic islands breaking the surface. The sky was orange or reddish, filled with carbon dioxide and methane. No oxygen existed in the atmosphere. Somewhere in those ancient seas, around 4 billion years ago, something extraordinary happened. Chemistry became biology. simple molecules organized into self-replicating systems. Life began. We don't know exactly how or where, but it happened, the most important event in Earth's history. For billions of years, life remained simple. Single-celled organisms, bacteria and archaea, were the only inhabitants of Earth. They lived in the oceans around volcanic vents in shallow pools. They were invisible to the naked eye, but they were transforming the planet. Some of these early microbes developed a revolutionary ability: photosynthesis. They could capture sunlight and use it to make food, releasing oxygen as a waste product. This oxygen would eventually transform Earth's atmosphere and enable the evolution of complex life. Let me tell you more about these early photosynthetic organisms, because they're the reason you can breathe. They're called cyanobacteria, and they changed everything. Fossil structures called stromatolites, layered mounds built by cyanobacteria, are among the oldest evidence of life on Earth, dating back over 3 billion years. For over 1 billion years, these cyanobacteria pumped oxygen into the atmosphere, but the oxygen didn't accumulate. It reacted with dissolved iron in the oceans, creating rust that settled to the seafloor. The banded iron formations we mine today, the source of most of our steel, were created by bacterial respiration billions of years ago. Only after the oceans had absorbed all the iron they could did oxygen begin accumulating in the atmosphere. This was the Great Oxygenation Event, the first time free oxygen became a permanent part of Earth's air. It was a catastrophe for existing life, but an opportunity for new forms. The oxygen-rich atmosphere enabled a new kind of metabolism. Respiration, burning food with oxygen, releases far more energy than older metabolic processes. This extra energy would eventually make complex, active, multicellular life possible. Every breath you take connects you to those ancient cyanobacteria. But oxygen was poison to most early life. When photosynthetic organisms began producing it in large quantities, they caused the first mass extinction, the Great Oxygenation Event. Around 2.4 billion years ago, oxygen-intolerant life died off. Oxygen-tolerant life flourished. The rising oxygen had another dramatic effect. It reacted with methane in the atmosphere, removing a powerful greenhouse gas. Earth's temperature plummeted. Ice spread from the poles toward the equator. The planet entered a deep freeze that would last hundreds of millions of years. Scientists call this Snowball Earth. The entire planet may have been covered in ice, from pole to pole. The oceans froze over. Life survived only in isolated pockets, around volcanic vents, in liquid water beneath the ice, in rare open patches of sea. Snowball Earth conditions occurred multiple times over hundreds of millions of years. Each time, volcanic activity eventually released enough carbon dioxide to warm the planet and melt the ice. The climate swung between frozen hell and greenhouse conditions. Then, around 600 million years ago, something remarkable happened. After billions of years of single-celled simplicity, complex multicellular life suddenly appeared. The Ediacaran period saw the first large organisms, strange, soft-bodied creatures unlike anything alive today. These Ediacaran creatures are mysterious. Dickinsonia looked like ribbed ovals. Charnia looked like feathery fronds. Tribrachidium had threefold symmetry, unlike almost any modern animal. They left fossils but few clues about how they lived or what they were. Most Ediacaran organisms went extinct without descendants. They were an experiment in complex life that mostly failed, but some lineages survived and diversified, leading to an explosion of new forms that would transform the oceans forever. The Cambrian explosion, around 540 million years ago, was the Big Bang of animal evolution in a geologically brief period, perhaps 20 million years. Most major animal groups appeared, eyes evolved. Shells evolved, predators and prey evolved in an arms race that continues today. The Cambrian seas were alien and wonderful. Anomalocaris, a meter, long predator with grasping appendages and compound eyes, hunted smaller creatures. Trilobites scuttled across the sea floor, their armored bodies preserved in countless fossils. Hallucigenia walked on spines with a row of tentacles on its back. Let me tell you more about these Cambrian creatures, because they represent a turning point in life's history. The Burgess Shale in British Columbia and the Chengjiang deposits in China preserve Cambrian ecosystems in exquisite detail, even soft tissues that usually don't fossilize. Opabinia had 5 eyes and a long proboscis with a claw at the end. When it was first described at a scientific conference, the audience laughed. It seemed too strange to be real, but it was real. Life was experimenting with body plans we can barely imagine. Pikaia was a small ribbon-like creature with a primitive notochord, a stiffening rod along its back. It may be ancestral to all vertebrates, including us. This modest little animal, swimming in Cambrian seas, might be our oldest known ancestor in the fossil record. The Cambrian explosion raises profound questions. Why did complex life appear so suddenly after billions of years of simplicity? Was it rising oxygen levels? The end of snowball Earth? The evolution of predation driving an arms race? We still don't fully understand what triggered this transformation. What we do know is that the basic body plans of modern animals, arthropods, mollusks, chordates, and others appeared during this brief period. The blueprint for animal diversity was drawn in the Cambrian, and evolution has been elaborating on it ever since. Let me tell you about what the continents looked like during these ancient times. Because the world map you know is just the latest configuration of land that has been moving and reshaping itself for billions of years. Earth's surface is broken into plates that float on the semi-molten mantle beneath. These plates move slowly, centimeters per year, but over millions of years that adds up. Continents drift, collide, break apart. The map is always changing. 500 million years ago, most land was concentrated in the southern hemisphere. A supercontinent called Gondwana contained what would become Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, and India, all joined together in a single enormous landmass. The northern hemisphere was mostly ocean, with smaller landmasses scattered across it. Laurentia, future North America, was separate from Baltica, future Europe, and Siberia was its own isolated continent. The world map was unrecognizable. Over the next few 100 million years, these land masses drifted and collided. Mountains rose where plates pushed together. The Appalachians, now worn and gentle, were once as tall as the Himalayas, built by the collision of continents that are now an ocean apart. Around 300 million years ago, all the continents came together into a single supercontinent called Pangaea. For over 100 million years, you could have walked from the South Pole to the North Pole without crossing an ocean. Pangaea's interior was harsh, distant from any ocean. The center of the supercontinent was extremely dry. Vast deserts stretched across what would become the American Southwest and the Sahara. Coastal regions were more hospitable, but even they were unlike anything today. Then Pangaea began to break apart. Around 200 million years ago, rifts opened in the supercontinent. The Atlantic Ocean began to form as the Americas pulled away from Africa and Europe. The world we know started taking shape. Let me tell you about the creatures that lived during these different ages. Because before humans, Earth was home to life forms that would seem fantastic if we encountered them today. After the Cambrian explosion, life remained in the oceans for over 100 million years. Fish evolved, first jawless, then jawed sharks appeared. Their basic body plan so successful it has barely changed in 400 million years. Coral reefs built vast underwater cities. Cephalopods, ancestors of squid and octopus, became the top predators of ancient seas. Some had shells coiled into tight spirals. Others had shells stretched into straight cones meters long. Around 470 million years ago, life began colonizing the land. Plants came first, simple mosses and liverworts hugging the ground. They had no roots, no leaves, no flowers, but they were pioneers, transforming bare rock into the beginnings of soil. Arthropods followed the plants onto land. Early millipedes and scorpion-like creatures became the first land animals. They breathed air, walked on legs, and found a world with no predators and abundant food. They grew large. Some millipedes reached over 2 meters in length. Then came the forests. The Carboniferous period, around 350 to 300 million years ago, saw the first great forests. Giant club mosses and horsetails reached heights of 30 meters. Tree ferns spread their fronds above swampy ground. The air was thick with oxygen. The high oxygen levels of the Carboniferous allowed insects to grow enormous. Dragonflies with 70-centimeter wingspans hunted through the forest canopy. Cockroaches the size of house cats scuttled through the undergrowth. Millipedes as long as cars crawled among the fallen logs. These Carboniferous forests would become coal. Dead plant matter accumulated in swamps, buried and compressed over millions of years. The coal we burn today is fossilized sunlight, captured by plants that lived 300 million years ago, long before dinosaurs existed. Vertebrates colonized the land too. Fish with sturdy fins evolved into amphibians, creatures that could walk on land but still needed water to reproduce. Some grew large like the crocodile, like Eriops, top predators in their swampy world. Then came the reptiles, with their revolutionary innovation, the amniotic egg. Unlike amphibians, reptiles could lay eggs on land, free from dependence on water. This opened the continental interiors to vertebrate life for the first time. Let me tell you more about the conquest of land, because it is one of the most dramatic transitions in life's history. For billions of years, life existed only in water. Leaving the seas required solving problems that evolution had never faced before. Animals on land had to support their own weight without water's buoyancy. They had to breathe air instead of extracting oxygen from water. They had to prevent themselves from drying out. They had to find food and mates in a vast empty landscape. Plants solved some of these problems first. By creating soil and shade, they made the land habitable for animals. By providing food and shelter, they gave animals reasons to stay. The colonization of land was a partnership between plants and the animals that followed them. Fish with lobed fins like the famous Tiktaalik began exploring shallow water and mudflats. Their sturdy fins could support their weight for short periods. Their simple lungs, which many fish have for supplemental oxygen, became more important. Over millions of years, fins became limbs. The Permian world, before the Great Extinction, was dominated by synapsids, our distant relatives. Dimetrodon, with its distinctive sail, is often mistaken for a dinosaur, but was actually more closely related to you than to any dinosaur. It was a top predator of its time. The Permian also saw the first complex terrestrial ecosystems with herbivores, carnivores, and scavengers. Before this, most land animals were predators or detritivores. The evolution of herbivory, eating plants directly, transformed how energy moved through ecosystems. Then the Permian extinction wiped almost everything out. The Synapsid dynasty ended. When life recovered, dinosaurs and their relatives had taken over. Our ancestors were reduced to small marginal creatures, a position we'd hold for over 150 million years. Before the dinosaurs, reptiles called synapsids dominated the land. These weren't dinosaurs, they were actually more closely related to us. Dimetrodon, with its distinctive sailback, was a synapsid. So were the Gorgonopsids, saber-toothed predators that ruled the late Permian world. Then came the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history. The Permian Triassic extinction 252 million years ago killed over 90% of all species. The Synapsid dynasty ended. Most of Earth's life was wiped out in geological instant. The cause was probably volcanic. Massive eruptions in what is now Siberia released enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and toxic gases. The climate swung wildly. The oceans became acidic and oxygen depleted. Life on Earth came closer to complete extinction than at any other time. Recovery was slow. For millions of years after the extinction, ecosystems remained impoverished. But eventually, life rebounded. And the survivors included a group of reptiles that would come to dominate the planet for over 150 million years. The dinosaurs, the age of dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era, is probably the most famous chapter of pre-human Earth. From about 250 to 66 million years ago, dinosaurs were the dominant land animals. They evolved into thousands of species, filling every large animal ecological role. Early dinosaurs were modest, dog-sized or smaller, running on 2 legs. But they diversified rapidly. Some became enormous, like the long-necked sauropods that were the largest animals ever to walk the earth. Argentinosaurus may have weighed over 70 tons. Others became fearsome predators. Tyrannosaurus rex, with its massive skull and bone-crushing jaws, is the most famous. But T-Rex appeared only in the last few million years of the dinosaur age. Earlier predators like Allosaurus and Spinosaurus were equally formidable. Dinosaurs weren't just giants. Many were small, chicken-sized or smaller. Some had feathers. Birds are actually dinosaurs, the only lineage that survived the extinction. The dinosaur family tree was as diverse as modern mammals, filling every imaginable niche. The Mesozoic world was different in other ways too. Flowering plants didn't exist until the Cretaceous period, the last age of dinosaurs. Earlier Mesozoic landscapes were dominated by conifers, ferns, and cycads. No grass existed anywhere. Grasslands wouldn't appear until after the dinosaurs were gone. The climate was warmer than today throughout most of the Mesozoic. No ice caps existed at the poles. Dinosaurs lived in Antarctica, which was forested and mild. Sea levels were higher, with shallow seas flooding large parts of the continents. In the seas, marine reptiles had evolved to rival sharks as top predators. Ichthyosaurs looked like dolphins, but were reptiles. Plesiosaurs had long necks and paddle. Like limbs, mosasaurs, appearing late in the Mesozoic, were the largest marine predators of their time. Pterosaurs ruled the skies. These weren't dinosaurs, but close relatives. Flying reptiles with wingspans ranging from sparrow, sized to over 10 meters, Quetzalcoatlus. One of the largest stood as tall as a giraffe and could fly across continents. Mammals existed throughout the age of dinosaurs, but they remained small, mostly mouse-sized or smaller. The ecological dominance of dinosaurs left no room for mammals to grow large or diversify significantly. We lived in the shadows for 150 million years. Let me tell you more about the Mesozoic world and what made it so different from our own. For over 150 million years, this was a planet we wouldn't recognize, despite having continents and oceans and forests. The Triassic period, which followed the Great Permian extinction, was a time of recovery and experimentation. Many groups competed for dominance: early dinosaurs, crocodile relatives, mammal ancestors. Dinosaurs weren't obviously superior at first. They won out over millions of years. The Jurassic period saw dinosaurs ascend to dominance. Sauropods, the long-necked giants, became enormous. Stegosaurus carried plates and spikes. Allosaurus hunted in packs. The first birds appeared, evolving from small feathered dinosaurs. The Cretaceous period was the longest and last age of dinosaurs. It saw the greatest dinosaur diversity. T-Rex and Triceratops lived during this period. So did the duck-billed hadrosaurs, the armored ankylosaurs, and the raptor. Like dromaeosaurs made famous by Jurassic Park, flowering plants appeared in the Cretaceous and began transforming ecosystems. Bees evolved to pollinate them. The relationship between flowers and pollinators, one of the most important ecological partnerships on modern Earth, began during the reign of the dinosaurs. The Cretaceous also saw the rise of modern groups of insects, including ants, termites, and butterflies. Many of the ecological relationships we see today, between plants and pollinators, between decomposers and forests, have their roots in the Cretaceous world. Dinosaurs weren't cold-blooded like modern reptiles. Evidence suggests many were warm-blooded, with high metabolisms and active lifestyles. Some may have been nurturing parents, guarding nests and caring for young. They were more like birds than like lizards. Then, 66 million years ago, the asteroid came. We talked about this in another video. A rock the size of a mountain struck what is now Mexico, triggering a global catastrophe. Within a few years, all non-bird dinosaurs were extinct, along with pterosaurs, marine reptiles, and countless other species. The post dinosaur world was our world. The Cenozoic era, the age of mammals. With dinosaurs gone, mammals rapidly diversified and grew large. Within a few million years, the ecological roles once filled by dinosaurs were filled by mammals instead. Early Cenozoic mammals would look strange to modern eyes. Uintatherium had 6 horns and saber-like tusks. Andrewsarchus may have been the largest land predator mammal ever, a giant wolf-like creature. Basilosaurus was an early whale that still had tiny hind legs. Let me tell you more about these early Cenozoic mammals, because they show how evolution experiments with form after mass extinctions. With dinosaurs gone, mammals had ecological space to fill, but they had to figure out how to fill it. The Paleocene and Eocene epochs, the first 20 million years after the dinosaurs, produced mammals that look like rough drafts of modern forms. Coryphodon was a hippo, like Browser. Phenacodus might be ancestral to horses, elephants, and other groups. Masonix was a wolf, like Predator, with hooves instead of claws. Whales evolved during this time from land mammals related to hippos. Early whales like Pakicetus looked like wolves with hooves. Over millions of years, they lost their legs, developed flippers, and became the marine giants we know today. Evolution can transform bodies beyond recognition. Bats evolved too, taking to the air. The only mammals to achieve powered flight. The oldest bat fossils show fully formed wings, so we don't know exactly how flight evolved. But by 50 million years ago, bats were filling the nocturnal skies, eating insects much as they do today. Primates, our own order, appeared early in the Cenozoic. The earliest primates were small, nocturnal insect-eating creatures that lived in tropical forests. Over millions of years, some became larger, more social, more intelligent. Eventually, one lineage would produce us. The cooling and drying of the Cenozoic drove many of these evolutionary changes. As forests shrank and grasslands expanded, new ecological pressures emerged. Horses evolved to run on grasslands. Predators evolved to chase them. The arms race between hunters and hunted intensified. Horses evolved in North America, starting as dog-sized forest dwellers with multiple toes, gradually becoming the single-toed grassland runners we know today. Elephants evolved in Africa, their ancestors small and trunkless. Whales evolved from land mammals, returning to the sea their distant ancestors had left. Grasslands appeared for the first time around 30 million years ago. This new ecosystem transformed mammal evolution. Horses, cattle, antelope. These grazing animals evolved in response to grasslands. So did their predators, cats, dogs, and hyenas. The climate cooled through the Cenozoic. Ice began building up at the poles. Antarctica, which had drifted to its current position, froze over about 34 million years ago. The Arctic Ocean began freezing about 3 million years ago. This cooling culminated in the Ice Ages, the Pleistocene epoch, starting about 2.5 million years ago. Great ice sheets advanced and retreated across the northern continents. Sea levels rose and fell by over 100 meters. The climate swung between glacial and interglacial conditions. The Ice Age world was dominated by megafauna, giant mammals that would dwarf their modern relatives. Mammoths and mastodons, giant ground sloths as tall as giraffes, saber-toothed cats, giant beavers, short-faced bears twice the size of grizzlies. Let me tell you more about the Ice Age world, because it is the most recent pre-human Earth and the one most familiar to us. The Pleistocene epoch, from about 2.5 million to 11,000 years ago, was a time of giants. Mammoths were not just big elephants. They were magnificently adapted to cold climates, with thick fur, small ears, and fat humps for energy storage. Multiple species ranged across North America, Europe, and Asia. Some survived until about 4,000 years ago on isolated Arctic islands. Ground sloths reach sizes that seem impossible. Megatherium, the largest, stood over 6 meters tall on its hind legs, taller than a giraffe. It lived in South America and ate leaves from trees, pulling branches down with its enormous claws. Saber-toothed cats like Smilodon were apex predators. Their famous teeth were actually too fragile for biting through bone. They probably used them to slice through the soft throats of large prey. They hunted the same megafauna that would later go extinct. The dire wolf was larger and more robust than any modern wolf. Thousands of them have been found in the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, trapped while trying to scavenge prey that had already become stuck. The tar pits preserve a remarkable snapshot of Ice Age California. Giant beavers, the size of black bears, built dams in Ice Age rivers. Short-faced bears stood 12 feet tall on their hind legs. Giant armadillos, called glyptodonts, had shells so large that early humans used them as shelters. The climate swung dramatically during the Ice Ages. Glacial periods saw ice sheets covering Canada, northern Europe, and northern Asia. Interglacial periods were warmer, sometimes warmer than today. We currently live in an interglacial period called the Holocene. Sea levels rose and fell by over 100 meters as water was locked up in ice sheets and then released. Land bridges appeared and disappeared. Humans walked from Asia to North America across Beringia. Later, rising seas cut that connection. And then, finally, our lineage split from chimpanzees around 6 or 7 million years ago. Australopithecus walked upright in Africa 3 or 4 million years ago. Homo erectus spread across Africa and Asia nearly 2 million years ago. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. In the context of Earth's 4.5 billion year history, humans are newcomers who just arrived. We've existed for less than 1% of 1% of Earth's history. Everything I've described, all those billions of years of geology and evolution, happened without us. Let me tell you about what these pre-human worlds would have felt like if you could visit them. Because understanding the sensory experience helps us appreciate how alien Earth once was. If you could stand on Earth 4 billion years ago, you wouldn't survive a second. The atmosphere had no oxygen. The surface was too hot. Radiation from the young Sunday would have been lethal. Even with a spacesuit, you'd find nothing recognizable, just molten rock and poisonous gases. A billion years later, the surface had cooled and oceans had formed. You could theoretically survive in a spacesuit, but there'd be nothing to see. No plants, no animals, just rock and water and orange, tinted sky. The smell would be sulfurous, volcanic, utterly foreign. During Snowball Earth, you'd find a frozen world from pole to pole. The ice would stretch to the horizon in every direction. The temperature would be colder than Antarctica. Life would exist only in hidden refugia, hot springs, volcanic vents, perhaps liquid water beneath the ice. The Cambrian seas would be the first familiar environment. But only barely. The water would be full of life. But none of it would look quite right. Trilobites would scuttle below you. Anomalocaris might investigate you as potential prey. Nothing would have a backbone. The Carboniferous forests would feel almost prehistoric in the Hollywood sense. Giant dragonflies buzzing overhead, enormous millipedes crawling through the undergrowth. The air would be noticeably richer in oxygen. You might feel slightly euphoric, slightly energized, but there would be no flowers, no grass, no birds singing. The sounds would be different. Insect calls, perhaps amphibian croaks, but nothing like the bird, filled soundscape we know. The silence would be strange, incomplete. A Jurassic forest would have dinosaurs, of course, huge sauropods browsing on conifers, pterosaurs circling overhead, but again, no flowers, no grass, no birdsong as we know it. The vegetation would be recognizable but different. Ferns and cycads everywhere. Conifers, but not the species we know. The smell of a dinosaur world would be different too. Without flowering plants, there would be no flower scents. The dominant smells would be conifer resin, rotting vegetation, and probably a lot of dinosaur dung. Herbivore dung from animals eating tons of plants daily. The Ice Age would feel most familiar. Recognizable animals. Mammoths are just hairy elephants. Essentially, familiar landscapes, though with more ice. The air would be cold but breathable. The sounds might even include birdsong. You could almost imagine surviving there. The Ice Age world even had humans, our own species, Homo sapiens, and our close relatives like Neanderthals and Denisovans. We shared the planet with mammoths and saber-toothed cats. Our ancestors painted them on cave walls, hunted them, and watched them go extinct. This is the connection point between pre-human Earth and our world. Our ancestors lived through the transition. They saw the last mammoths, the last ground sloths, the last saber-toothed cats. Whether we caused those extinctions through hunting, habitat change, or disease is still debated. But by about 10,000 years ago, the megafauna were mostly gone from every continent humans had reached. Only in Africa, where animals had evolved alongside humans for millions of years, did large wildlife survive in abundance. Elsewhere, the giants vanished. Let me tell you about what studying these pre-human worlds has taught us about Earth and about ourselves. Because the deep past isn't just interesting, it is essential for understanding the present. We've learned that Earth's climate is not stable. It swings between extremes, snowball Earth to hothouse conditions, driven by changes in greenhouse gases, continental positions, and orbital variations. The mild, stable climate we've enjoyed for the past 10,000 years is unusual, possibly fragile. We've learned that mass extinctions happen 5 times in Earth's history. A majority of species have gone extinct in geological instants. Life always recovered, but not quickly. Recovery takes millions of years, and the species that recover are different from those that died. Let me tell you more about these mass extinctions, because they're crucial for understanding Earth's history. 5 times, the majority of species on Earth have disappeared. Each extinction reshaped life in fundamental ways, closing some evolutionary paths and opening others. The Ordovician extinction, 445 million years ago, killed perhaps 85% of marine species. Glaciation may have caused it. Ice sheets forming when the southern supercontinent drifted over the South Pole. Life in the warming seas afterward was different from what came before. The late Devonian extinction, around 370 million years ago, particularly devastated reef-building organisms. Coral reefs virtually disappeared for millions of years. The cause is still debated: volcanic activity, climate change, asteroid impact, or some combination. The Permian extinction was the worst. 90% of species gone. It took 10 million years for ecosystem diversity to recover. The survivors included the ancestors of dinosaurs, which would diversify to fill the emptied ecological niches. The Triassic extinction, 200 million years ago, cleared the way for dinosaur dominance. Competitors that had challenged dinosaurs during the Triassic were eliminated. For the next 135 million years, dinosaurs would rule unchallenged. And the Cretaceous extinction, 66 million years ago, ended the dinosaurs and made room for mammals. Each extinction was a catastrophe, but each also created opportunities for surviving lineages. We exist because of extinctions that eliminated our competition. Scientists now recognize that we may be causing a 6th mass extinction. Species are disappearing at rates comparable to the great extinctions of the past. But unlike those natural events, this one is caused by a single species. And we could choose to stop it. We've learned that the composition of the atmosphere can change dramatically. The Great Oxygenation Event shows that life can transform atmospheric chemistry on a planetary scale. We're doing the same thing now, in reverse, by adding carbon dioxide faster than any natural process. We've learned that evolution is not a ladder toward humans. For most of life's history, bacteria dominated. Then trilobites, then dinosaurs. Each group was successful in its own time. Well, adapted to its environment. We're not the goal of evolution. We're just the latest experiment. We've learned that continents move. The map of Earth is always changing, always has been, always will be, in 250 million years. A new supercontinent will form. The Atlantic will close. The world will be unrecognizable again. We've learned that chance plays an enormous role. If the asteroid had missed 66 million years ago, dinosaurs might still rule. If different organisms had survived the Permian extinction, life today would be unrecognizably different. History is contingent, not predetermined. Let me share some thoughts about what all this means for understanding our place on Earth. Because knowing the deep history changes how we see ourselves and our planet. We are recent. In the vast sweep of Earth's history, humans are newcomers who just showed up. The planet got along fine without us for over 4 billion years. Every ecosystem, every climate system, every geological process, all of it predates us by immense spans of time. We are contingent. Our existence depends on countless accidents, the right asteroid hitting at the right time, the right extinctions killing the right species, the right climate changes favoring the right adaptations. We're not inevitable, we're lucky, we are connected. The atoms in our bodies were forged in stars, processed through Earth's geology, cycled through billions of years of living systems. Some of those atoms were part of dinosaurs, trilobites, bacteria. We're made of recycled universe. We are powerful. For the first time in Earth's history, a single species can alter the planet on a geological scale. We're changing the atmosphere, the climate, the distribution of species. We're causing extinctions at rates comparable to the great mass extinctions of the past. This power comes with responsibility. We're the first species capable of understanding Earth's history and predicting its future. We can see the patterns of climate change and mass extinction in the geological record. We can choose whether to repeat them or avoid them. The deep history of Earth offers both warning and hope. We can see what happens when climate changes rapidly, when ecosystems collapse, when species go extinct. We can also see that life is remarkably resilient, that recovery is possible, that new forms can emerge from devastation. But recovery takes time, millions of years, not human lifetimes. The species that recover aren't the species that were lost. Every mass extinction reshuffles the deck. The world that emerges is different from the world that was destroyed. There is no going back. This is why the deep past matters. It shows us the stakes. It shows us what is possible and what is permanent. It gives us the long view that is so easy to lose in the rush of daily life. The Earth has been many things before. It will be many things again. The pre-human Earth had no one to appreciate it. No eyes looked at Cambrian seas with wonder. No mind contemplated Carboniferous forests with curiosity. No voice asked what came before or what might come after. All that beauty, all that strangeness, unwitnessed. We're the first species to look back and understand. The first to reconstruct what Pangaea looked like, what dinosaurs ate, how mass extinctions happened. The first to see our own place in the immense story of life. That is a privilege and maybe a responsibility. The Earth that existed before humans was not paradise. It was often hostile, sometimes lethal, always changing. Mass extinctions wiped out most of life repeatedly. Climates swung between unlivable extremes. The past was not better than the present. It was different. But the past also shows that life is resilient. It survived Snowball Earth. It survived the Permian extinction. It survived asteroid impacts. Whatever we do to the planet, life will continue. though not necessarily human life and not necessarily life we'd recognize. Think about this as you drift towards sleep. The ground beneath you is ancient beyond comprehension. The air you breathe was transformed by bacteria billions of years ago. The atoms in your body have cycled through countless living things over Earth's history. You are part of a story that started 4.5 billion years ago and will continue long after humans are gone. Whatever happens to our species, Earth will keep changing, continents will drift, species will evolve and go extinct. The story will go on. There is something comforting in that. Maybe, or something humbling, or both. We matter, but we're not the center of the story. We're one chapter in an epic that began before anything like us could exist, and will end long after we're gone. The Earth before humans was strange and wonderful and terrifying. Worlds of ice and worlds of fire. Creatures that would seem impossible if we saw them alive. Landscapes utterly unlike anything we know. All of it real, all of it gone, all of it part of the planet we inherited. We're the latest chapter in that story. Not the last chapter, there will be more after us. But the latest, what we do with our chapter matters. The choices we make will echo through geological time, becoming part of the record future beings might someday read. If you are drifting off now, let these thoughts settle. Billions of years of history beneath you. Billions of years of future ahead. You are at a specific point in an immense story, conscious of your place in it, able to wonder about what came before and what comes next. That is a remarkable thing to be, a species that can look back 4.5 billion years and imagine forward just as far. A species that can know how strange the past was and wonder how strange the future will be. A species that can fall asleep thinking about deep time. Thanks for spending this time with me tonight, traveling through the ages before humans existed. There are more mysteries to explore on this channel, more stories from the deep past that illuminate our present and future. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Good night. Sleep well. And remember, the ground beneath your bed was once ocean floor, mountain peak, desert sand, tropical swamp. It has been everything, and it will be everything again long after the bed and the building, and even the memory of humans is gone.